Hi everyone, it's me and welcome to today's video. And for today's video, of course, we are wrapping up our reads for the month of August. And I want to start this video off with mentioning that August was not my best reading month, and there were actually a few books that I really didn't enjoy that much, and actually for the first time a DNF as well in my August list of books. I just feel like I didn't enjoy a lot of the books that I had read this month. There were some books that were in the middle for me, and also some books that I highly disliked, but there were also a few gems which I really enjoyed. So at least there's that, but we're going to be going through them all, and we're going to go through all of my thoughts on that. And for the genre breakdown of this month, I had 2 classics, 1 romance, 1 Christian literature book, 1 literary fiction, and 1 non-fiction, so a bit of a mix there. So let's just start off with the first classic book that I read. The first book that I read this month was In The Rye by J.D. Salinger. So the story is set in the 1950s around New York City. We follow our protagonist Holden as he ambles around New York City for a couple of days before his official Christmas break begins. There's a bit of a loose plot here. A lot of the story is driven by slowly understanding Holden through his seemingly spontaneous life. We explore themes such as grief, the pains of growing up, the difficulty of what to make with your own life, and the ways that we build up walls in response to unspoken trauma. And this book was honestly just not for me. I gave it 3 stars, which honestly breaks my heart because I had such high expectations. I genuinely felt like it was so far off from what I thought it would be, and I'll give a couple of spoilers into the book because I feel like the plot is so not simple but like spontaneous that much. So it's very character driven, so there's not really that much that you can spoil. You really just have to spend the time with Holden and start to understand him. So firstly, we spend these few days with Holden in this fever dream of just walking around New York, and even though we slowly start to understand why he does what he does, it still felt very unrelatable for me. Holden is seemingly obsessed with authenticity and calling out incongruencies in people's personas and their actions, which once again we slowly start to understand why that is. But there were a couple of moments in this book that still left me saying, what's going on here? And I do have to mention that Holden has witnessed a lot of pain and suffering, and that informs his idea of what a good or a bad way to live is. We find out that he has a lot of guilt for the pain that he has witnessed. Even if certain things happen that weren't his fault, he still feels very guilty. With that, a lot of his actions and thoughts are explained. All that I was feeling was that he's self-destructing in so many more ways than one. The writing itself is very nice. Holden has such a distinct voice, but it's just a shame that this book just wasn't for me. After that, I read Written on the Body. This book was recommended by one of my favorite book talkers, Kende. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. And I went in knowing that this book was going to be good because it is a book about love and yearning, and it was really good. So let me just explain the synopsis. Now, this book follows our main protagonist, and she is from a middle-class British neighborhood in London, and she works as a translator. She meets and falls in love with a woman named Louise, but she's unfortunately in a relationship, and Louise is already married. She wants to stay committed to her partner, especially since she has disavowed passion and love in favor of a stable and committed partnership. Even with this in mind, she gives into her passions and she says, you know what, I'm going to begin going out with Louise, whose husband is also cheating on her from time to time. And just as they're enjoying their time together, Louise's husband drops a bitter bomb on their relationship, which causes an irrecoverable rift. This book is actually so beautiful. I rated it 4 stars. I didn't even know how much I was going to like it. I knew that I liked previous books about yearning, but this book exceeded my expectations in so many ways. First of all, can we give a round of applause to Jeanette Winterson for creating a main character who is so transient in gender but also extremely open, leaving so much to the imagination, which is a really hard thing to do, and towing that balance between the constraints of gender identity, especially in a love story, is not very easy to do, and she did that beautifully in this book. This book is not only about love but also about the ethicalness of cheating. It's also the battle of passion versus stability. Obviously there's some plot, but there's like a stream of consciousness element to it, which I absolutely love, and it's just so well done. She balanced all of these extremely large topics and blended them seamlessly in this book, and that just genuinely made me appreciate this author so much more. And not only that, but the depiction of an all-consuming, ferocious love is something that I always enjoy when it's done in a non-cliche way. The reason why I loved our protagonist is because she was so authentic and also flawed. There's a lot of grey in her character, and that just made her extremely relatable. And it honestly left me thinking about what can we actually do when we make a decision that makes us lose love. Like, I really felt seen because I feel like I'm constantly living in anxiety when it comes to making the wrong decisions, and it was just a really beautiful thing to be seen in that way. It was a great experience. The only reason it wasn't a 5-star for me was because there were a couple moments in the story that felt a bit disjointed to the actual plot. They just weren't that great to read. But this book is literally on the edge of perfect. It was such a great read, and I literally could not recommend this enough. I think that this is a romance book that pretty much anyone could learn something from, not only from understanding or reading about adultery, but also from the perspective of how powerful love is. It's definitely a book that I still think about to this day. It is such a beautiful book, and there are just a couple of quotes that I want to mention in this book because it is so beautiful. We were patient enough to count the hairs on each other's heads, too impatient to get undressed. It's like a very small quote, but it's just like that depiction of juxtaposition between the urgency and the savoring that exist within a passionate relationship. And another quote that I really love, it's kind of long. Love demands expression. It will not stay still. Stay silent, be good, be modest, be seen and not heard. No, it will break out in tongues of praise, the high note that smashes the glass and spills the liquid. It is no conservationist love. It is a big game hunter and you're the game. A curse on this game. How can you stick at a game when the rules keep changing? I shall call myself Alice and play croquet with the flamingos. In Wonderland everyone cheats, and love is Wonderland, isn't it? Love makes the world go round. Love is blind, all you need is love. Nobody ever died of a broken heart. You'll get over it. It'll be different when we're married. Think of the children. Time's a great healer. Still waiting for Mr. Right, Miss Right, and maybe all the little rights. It's the cliches that cause the trouble. A precise emotion seeks a precise expression. If what I feel is not precise, then should I call it love? It's so terrifying, love, that all I can do is shove it under a dumb bin of pink cuddly toys and send myself a greeting card saying, congratulations on your engagement, but I'm not engaged. I'm deeply distracted. I'm desperately looking the other way so that love won't see me. I could go on. It's a lot, but it is just stream of consciousness, amazing, witty, smart, poetic. I love it so much. It's just such an amazing book, and I honestly would recommend this to anybody who is human. The next book that I read was The Lost Sin Eater by Francine Rivers, and this was the book that I read for my book club of the month August, and we recently chose the book that we will be reading for September, and that is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. But The Lost Sin Eater was the book for August, and I just didn't enjoy this. I think I enjoyed the beginning and the ending more than the middle. The middle for me just felt very dogmatic. This is a Christian book, and we're following our main female character who is a young girl, and her community believes in the practice of sin eating, and she has been brought up her whole life to believe in this too. Their sin eater was an elected member of the community, which basically means that they cannot be a part of the community anymore. But when a strange prophet arrives, her belief is shaken 120 degrees, 180 degrees. And on top of trying to deal with her reality shaking, we're also trying to quell the violence from the unofficial village leader. I have a whole reading vlog where I read this book, so if you want more in-depth thoughts on it, go check that out. But I gave this 2 stars. Next, I read Brave New World by Aldus Huxley. This is a fiction book. It is a dystopian novel, and for a little bit of a synopsis, Bernard is one of our main protagonists, and he works in the business of conveying messages to people as they sleep, aka hypnopedia. And although he belongs to the Alpha Plus caste, he doesn't boast the same physical attributes as his peers, and this spurs him into questioning the society which he lives in. He's also friends with Helmholtz, who is a distinguished propaganda author, and the two men together begin to question their world, but for very different reasons, which eventually leads Bernard to exploration of the Savage Reservation. This is deeply one of my favorite books that I've ever read. It is 100% a 5-star read for me, and I feel like most people would have at least heard of this book, and it has left a lasting impact. This book is exactly as poignant as you would expect it to be, despite its short length. It's one of the books that has the full effect and weight of a novel. It feels extremely complete in its writing because it is more a story about comparing to the modern day themes that we struggle with. Things like the attention economy, the ability to make choices in life, and the power of failure. This book is definitely also about the way that society organizes itself to perpetually continue in its exploitative way without any material benefits for the people. And straight from the start of this book, you get a glimpse of how that stability is achieved, beginning right at reproduction. He's managed to write this whole world effectively. The imagery and the atmosphere are painted so well in this book. You can really feel the helicopters or see the deep red of the reproductive rooms. It is a bit of a sensory experience when you're reading this, but he also creates this sense of dread in a lot of the things that you see throughout this book, especially with the drug soma. There's this sense of dread watching people soma drug themselves into muscle and brain failure. Ultimately, on top of everything all, I think it's a story about the types of lives that we are meant to live and the types of lives that we get to choose to live. What was interesting to me was how the language and the writing of this book was extremely understandable, considering that this book was written in the 1930s. But I read this over the span of a couple days and I did not want to put it down. That's how good it was. It's such a compelling read, and it's absolutely a must read for everyone. And I'm just gonna say one of my favorite lines in the book. There is, of course, no reason why the new totalitarianisms should resemble the old. Government by clubs and firing squads, by artificial famine, mass imprisonment, mass deportation is not merely inhumane. Nobody cares about that nowadays. It is demonstrably inefficient, and in an age of advanced technology, inefficiency is the sin against the Holy Ghost. A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which all the powerful executives of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude. To make them love it is the task assigned in present-day totalitarian states to ministries of propaganda, newspaper editors, and school teachers. But their methods are still crude and unscientific. Yeah, just like that in itself is like the deep underlying message of this book, and it is amazing. I also have a reading vlog of this book, so if you want even more in-depth thoughts on it, praise, go check that out. And next I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. R.F. Kuang is probably one of my favorite authors. I really like the way that she writes fantasy, and particularly how she writes politics. I will say that this is probably my least favorite R.F. Kuang book that I've read so far. It's still a 4-star read because she is just that good, but I did struggle with aspects of this book, and it took me a little while to get into the swing of things. There were aspects of the story and choices made and themes that had to do with the idea of who is the right person to tell a story and whether cultural exploration is right or wrong, but I felt like that theme was not explored fully and it fell a bit flat. I wish we got more from her on that front of things. I do feel like the focus of this book was more on telling a cohesive story instead of the underlying meaning or politics. So in context of the larger themes and the way that the story was told, I feel like it did fall flat on some of the themes that it touched. And there's not much that I can say about this book without spoiling it, because you are very much dropped into the situation with the protagonist committing all of the acts that she does. And I don't want to take away from that discovery if you haven't already heard of this book. And I think it's fun to try to figure out what's going to happen along with June, our protagonist. This book is set in modern day times, so there's really no acclimating that needs to be done. R.F. Kuang has such an amazing ability to tell an impactful story, and even though this wasn't as good as Babel for me, it was still such an important read politically, and it's 100% a 4-star read for me. And the last book that I read this month was Women Who Think Too Much, and this book was a DNF at 33%, and it was not good. This book was written in 2004, so from a scientific point it was extremely outdated. It also had this very pernicious misogyny that permeated throughout the book. There are tiny little bits of advice sprinkled throughout the book, but I felt like the angle which she was coming at it was just completely not for me. She kind of looked at it from the point of looking down on yourself and shutting down your thoughts and not really having any sort of curiosity for why you are overthinking. Just immediately shut them down and don't try to ever heal what could be causing those anxieties to show up. It was a very hard line, like, all thoughts are bad, just stop thinking. And I truly do not resonate with this message, and I do not want to continue reading it. So my first DNF of the year, unfortunately, it had to be done. Anyways, so those are the 6 books that I read and DNF'd in August. Not my best reading month, so I'm going to be leaving you guys here. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment down below what your favorite book from August was. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.